Hi, I'm Liz Cully, and welcome back to Cool, Cool, Cool. Each week, I give you a glimpse into what I think is cool and chat with a ton of people that are definitely cool. No topic is off bounds unless, I guess, it's not cool. Welcome to Cool, Cool, Cool. My friend Russell went to Outfest and saw Kokomo City, and he immediately told me that I would absolutely love the documentary, and he was completely right. Kokomo City is an incredible documentary directed by Dee Smith, and it follows 4 Black trans women, really showing all of us their stories and their lives, showing the fun, the natural, the humanized side of Black trans women. That is a direct quote from Dee Smith. And I absolutely loved it. It follows Daniella Carter, who is on the show today, who I absolutely fell in love with during Kokomo City and was so happy to discover her because now I'm never letting her go because I'm obsessed. Leah Mitchell, Dominique Silver, and Coco Dadal. I know you're not supposed to choose favorites ever, but it's my show and I'm going to choose a favorite. And I have my favorite on today. Daniella is a star. She is so earnest and just captivating on screen in Kokomo City. All of the women are, but she just really is she's just got the thing, you know? And so I was thrilled when she accepted my request of coming on Cool, Cool, Cool. Quick disclaimer. My darling, dear Daniella, her internet was a little crap. It is not her fault. We blame Verizon. But do me a favor, bear with it. Bear with me, bear with her. This is such an important episode. It is such a good one. Just listen to it all the way through and know that we're living in a time where sometimes the internet sucks. So please enjoy. I mean, it's not like you weren't working out, doing crazy workouts in the movie. I was like, okay, Daniella, we know you are an athlete. Look at this, these jumping jacks and all types of stuff. I have to tell you, I don't remember how it all went down. If I was already following you, you followed me, whatever. But because I don't remember these things. But the second I saw that I was like, there's no way that Daniella, I clicked you, died, freaked out, DM'd you oh my God, I'm shook. And then I called my darling friend Russell, who was the one that told me about your film. He was like, Liz, you're going to be fucking obsessed with this. And I was like, no, I already know about it because you won all these accolades at Sundance. I was like, no. And I've known Lena for many, many years. I'm like, no, I've already heard about this. So I woke up at 7:00 in the morning and I was like, I am so excited for this interview today. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, and on top of that, then yesterday you released this new project that you did for Self magazine. Obviously, I work at Condé Nast, so I was like, we are even more intertwined than I ever could have thought about it. I was like, she directed this amazing piece. I can't wait to see it. Cyndi Lauper's posting it, who I saw when I was very, very hungover, potentially still drunk in a bodega on the Upper West Side 15 years ago. I was like, Daniella, what is going on?
But she understands because girls just want to have fun.
Let me tell you, when I lived in New York City, all I was doing, actually, it's funny. And you being from New York, I wonder if you would agree. I had the most fun. When I go to New York, I go off the Richter scale. I go hard in the paint. I'm out late. I drink. I eat. I see all my friends. But when I lived in New York as a young person, I had no money. I was working in clubs. I was allegedly involved in things that I believe are now recreationally legal in the state of New York. But at the time, I may or may not have been doing things that somebody potentially could have said was illegal. It was the best of times in New York, but the worst of times. Do you feel like New York heightens every emotion? Do you kind of agree, or am I totally wrong about New York?
No. You're definitely right because so recently I've been going back and forth from New York to Indiana. Definitely a huge difference in so many ways, more than one. But the thing about it that I actually like, believe it or not, about Indiana, what it offers is more of a slow pace environment. But then also, I'm like in this very small bubble. So I'm
Yeah.
probably not experiencing the Indiana that most people are experiencing. And then I'm like with my like husband's family. And so for me, when I come back to New York, being in such a fast-paced environment, it's not everybody seems so like angry a little bit. Not
Yeah.
angry, because I feel like that's what other people who are non-New Yorkers say about us, but just there, it's true. Like a New Yorker is so unbothered that sometimes it can feel aggressive, you know? And so it's like when I
Yeah.
come back, it's like there's this level of like approachability in like other places where it's like, oh, if I see somebody like I nod and I say, good morning, hi. To a New York, it's like, I don't know you. Why are you speaking to me? You know, and so it's
Yeah.
like for me, having to survive the streets of New York too, and then finally getting to a place where I have like a home, a family, a support system. I'm like that like really like gritty survival feeling that New York kind of sometimes make you feel like. I'm usually a little over that. Like I
Yeah.
can't. That it's like I feel like even if you're not an artist, you have that artist hustle mentality to you,
Yep.
and it's a little
Well, no, it's right. And that's
very.
actually, I mean, and listen, you're from New York, but you've been in the industry, in the entertainment industry for 10 years. You were in Laverne Cox's T Word 10 years ago. How have you seen the industry change? I mean, now you're directing, you have your own film festival. Like you have a lot, a lot has happened in 10 years, but what have you seen in the industry really change for you in the last 10 years in the entertainment industry?
I think in the last 10 years, what I saw was a wave of the marketable conversation until it became a political pawn, right?
Mm,
And so I think that there was a genuine interest within the industry to create more visibility and opportunities for trans artists in specifically outside of the documentary space,
yeah.
right? And then what we saw was like this wave after Laverne Cox graced the cover of Time magazine, and she was fiercely advocating for more representation, challenging the industry to go beyond just seeing her as like the representation of trans talent,
Yep.
specifically within the creative arts. And so then we saw other shows like Pose. Then we saw legendary documentary like Pure Kids for Life, right? And excuse me, and My House. So the networks were starting to take interest, but while there was certain positions that were being opened up, such as like them as the actors, we didn't see many opportunities behind the cameras. And so then, right, as the movement went along within the industry, it kind of went from Laverne being the representation to the opportunity of a Pose show to exist, right? And so while I felt like there was a sense of advancement, I was reminded though of what exceptionalism looks like in the industry, right? Because for these women to even get access to that opportunity, they had to be the exceptional voice,
Right.
right? They had to be willing in some ways to be the token, but an equitable token, right? Because it was like, okay, Janet was the first, but she made sure, right, to create a pipeline of opportunity within her representation. So that way, right, like the cast of Post could be the first of many, right? And I'm thinking specifically about MJ Rodriguez becoming the first trans woman to win a Golden Globe. And so what we saw was right, these women who, in the position of exceptionalism, as the people in the position of power, they fought not only for their opportunity, but for others. And for me, as I saw this movement taking the different, I want to say ebbs and flows, right?
Hmm.
Where we saw the wave of green light, then we started slowing down, then green light again of trans narratives. I think now, unfortunately, it's so much different because it's like the trans community is being used as a political pawn for the right wing agenda to say that somehow we are taking away women's rights or we're confusing people about what women's rights are. And so these media companies are afraid, right? Because it's more about capitalism than it is about real change in a sense of like at the societal level, because capitalism don't really care about people. It cares about the green, right? And how
Yep.
can you take advantage of the most marginalized, of the most poor? And so I think that what we see is now this scarcity of wanting to continue to highlight the narratives because of the political climate. And while I think that there is hope for this movement to continue within the industry of greenlighting more trans projects, I think that, already with the industry's issues of like with the, Writers Guild strike and the SAG strike, like they have so many more issues that unfortunately, I just don't think that they're going to prioritize trans representation as an issue. And so what we'll see is that what we thought was this wave of opportunity happening for us, we're going to go back to the beginning of what felt like the beginning of time a bit, right? And fighting for these opportunities. Because for them, what makes our narratives important now when so many people are going to get distracted by the politics of it,
Right.
not the humanity of the story that's being told, and the scarcity of having to take on politics within media in terms of narrative representation is something that we know historically they didn't want to do. When you think about the civil rights movement, when these activists started getting a certain level of visibility, if they wasn't murdered, then there was this demand that the media, right, started to tell the other stories more than those stories. So we didn't hear about the people dying at marches. We were only told the stories about the people who was inciting riots, right, at these marches. And so they wanted to control the narrative in a way where it felt as if it was like this very like neutral, bipartisan in a way kind of platform, but really it only centered white voices. It only centered white experience. And that's what feels like it's being threatened right now. And so we're still fighting the old white man in a position of power, asking him to see value in marginalized stories. And right now they're focused on capitalism, AI being able to be a key source for them to be able to do that with. And so, yeah, I think this industry, with all the many waves we've seen with advancements and recognition, if anything, we got in battle and we had a few wins. We get
You froze right at the end. And I'm like, no, Daniella, keep going. Oh my God, your internet's going to give me a heart attack. I'm going to have a heart attack right here on the floor.
It's not me, it's Verizon. So, girl.
Fucking Verizon. Another white man just fucking us all up. Well, no, these fucking white men. You make a lot of really good points, and this is why it's so exciting to see you directing Daniella's Guestbook, which I want to get into a lot about your platform, which supports and amplifies BIPOC creators in this world. I think taking control of the narrative is really important. I think a lot of times in queer stories specifically, it's a lot of times cis white men who are gay, but they have the opportunity first before women, and then, women of color, and then trans women of color. Like they are always a cis white man, regardless of their sexuality, is typically more palatable to straight white people than anybody else. And that's fine. And that's great. But I think we can't have, and that's why I'm involved in LPAC, which is an incredible organization that I talk about all the time, where we're trying to get female identifying queer folks into office, particularly those of color. And that is why us women, especially white women, especially white queer women, have to start rallying around all women in general, because we can't just rely on cis white men, regardless of their sexual orientation, to fucking speak up for us, because they don't typically. But I think that's why it's so important that, people are given the opportunity to tell their own stories, which is incredible that you're directing and producing now, and that has been your trajectory over the last 10 years. And I can't imagine what you have in the pipeline and what the next 10 years will be for you. In Kokomo City, what I loved is that it really felt like the presence of another white cis man wasn't there, kind of controlling the narratives. And I felt like throughout the film, you kept directly speaking to camera and really talking about your experience specifically, which I loved. because I felt like you were talking to me, you were talking to other people watching it. It was like you directly in my eyes being like, no, bitch, you need to listen to what I'm saying. And I was like, Daniella, yes, I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm listening. I swear to God, I'm listening. But did you feel... And guess what? And the amazing thing is, as you starring in this, you had a lot to... You have this incredible ability for such a young age to like really see outside of yourself and your experience and everyone's experience. Did you feel like this was an opportunity? I know you were in the T Word. I know you were in a lot of other projects, but did you feel like in Kokomo City, you were able to really craft your own story and speak as clearly to the camera as I felt you were?
So here's the thing. So when you say young, I think to anybody who is non-trans, I'm young, but in trans years, I'm a dinosaur.
Okay, fair
And
enough.
so
Fair
I
enough.
think like I've, I've lived quite a few lives, it feels
Yes.
like. But I think one of the things for me when telling my story in Kokomo City, or it feel like I was speaking directly to you, is because I think it was coming from a place that, right, like since the T Word, being, 18 years old, 20 years old, 18 to 20 years old at that time when we were filming that, I was just coming out of rape, like a rape experience. I was just literally, days, maybe, I think it was days or like maybe even a week out before the release of the T Word. I had just got my own apartment. And so much of my life had just began literally days before the release of the T Word. And so much has happened since then, right? And I've been able to, before I got engaged to an insanely rich person, literally months after the release of the T Word, and I got to access to resources to go like do crazy shit, like get engaged under the Eiffel Tower in Paris, sickening ring, no, literally living like the doll should. And so, after I'm in this relationship and I'm thinking like I finally overcome oppression and poverty. And then there was this unfortunate event that happens that where we get separated. And so now I'm back to ground zero, back to living in poverty, back to no resources. And so I thought, what do you know how to do best? You, bitch, know how to survive, bitch. Like, if there's nobody else who knows how to fucking survive, it's you. So figure it the fuck out. And girl, in New Mexico, I was the Black trans little Oprah. Okay, like it was very that energy. So I'm back to a place of confusion though, right? And literally not knowing what to do. So I go to sex work, and here I am still being invited into certain spaces, right? Because of this accolade of being on the T Word and getting to the TED Talk moment too, and I didn't really have the financial backing, right? Or like resources to keep up that image. And I didn't want anybody knowing that I'm like separated now and going through these personal issues. So here I am in a strip club. Here I am getting sugar daddies. Here I am balancing sugar daddies, shaking my ass at night, right? To show up for these opportunities. So by the time Kokomo City came, right? Like, and I was at a place where after navigating that journey, and then getting fed up with that. And I then put myself through a film program in Brooklyn. And I asked myself, what is your calling? What is it you love to do? And there is something that is deep down inside of me that believes that once you've gone through rape 10 times, once you jumped out of windows, once you've slept on the streets, once you've had to literally go and navigate what felt like every struggle in society to fight for your yeses, you say to yourself, what's my calling? There's something here, and that calling has to be you just simply surviving. And so that's storytelling.
Yeah.
Your ability to tell your story, but there are so many other people's whose stories are just like yours. Because what I know is I'm never the only one. And so I started to say to myself, okay, what can you do? So I'll go into producing. I get into producing, and then by the time Kokomo City comes up, here I am now like, okay, I'm at an ad agency. This is a project talking about sex work. And, I am at a place where I can comfortably say right, that I am destined for greatness. Not only because I have a job, but because I am committed to no longer live in survival. And so every person I meet will become the next tool and access point for me and my network to help elevate me out of this
Yeah.
survival. And that's what I did, you know. And so when Kokomo City came, it was a way for me to stand in truth, to stand in power, to say no shade to the white bitch, because I've been there. I've said it behind this bitch, whether it was me sucking a dick or using my white person's card, okay, my white partner's card. And I know that feeling. I know what it felt like to feel like the stripper girl, to feeling like the elitist Black girl. And so it was time that when I had the opportunity to talk to both versions of not only myself, but of the women that I've encountered, the women that have, you know, somehow seen that because I'm able to access that space with them, deemed me enough, but could look down on the trans person who's experienced and who I am, right? I am that homeless Black trans girl. I am that homeless Black trans woman who lacked resource and opportunity. And so when I was able to realize that there's some type of power in that story, to be able to, in some ways, some people would say conform, but the ability to be able to exist within both communities, and I say both, one at the socioeconomic level and then one at the cultural level, right? And that stark difference of it being whether you consider it upper middle class or wealthy, or simply just being trans and poor or trans and wealthy, right? That I knew that somebody needed to hear that it's okay for one to be the sex worker and surviving, but for the bitch who's constantly always looking down on people in the spaces that is considered of prestige, of affluence, it's time that you get called out because, bitch, you laid up, put up your privilege. And these people existing in spaces with you who use survival tactics don't deserve your shame, don't deserve your prejudice. Because, bitch, at the end of the day, the only thing you're using to access that space is money. And so if their money brought them to that space with you, regardless of how they choose to present themselves or what they have to do to get there, they deserve that. They deserve respect at the human level because they did whatever they had to do as a human to get access to that same place that you call equality. And so if you're deserving of it, one day. And so I wanted to challenge people to think about that, to give the mother who rejects, right, a child, to the person in privilege, to the Black community that don't even want to talk about the fucking issues, that we all Black, but we the same ones shaming each other, killing each other. Right? I'm not talking about Black on Black crime when the ways in which they have that conversation only includes Black men killing Black men. I'm talking about Black on Black crime of a Black man killing a Black trans woman, of a
Yes.
Black person killing a Black trans person, right? Like, because that in that conversation, the collective liberation is that all Black people just want to experience protection and freedom. And so when we're not having those conversations, when we're compartmentalizing them to be a woman's issue, a Black man's issue, a trans issue, we forget it. And so that's what I was hoping to do when I looked in that camera, for the white woman to feel called out and attacked, boots, and for the Black person to look inward and say, how am I contributing to the problem that I really want to be, in some ways, a part of a collective effort in challenging whiteness, patriarchy, to be a part of collective liberation for all of us.
Well,
Sorry,
one, first of all, your nails look great. So use all that. We both have blue nails, which I love.
Yeah.
No, but I think you did that. Listen, again, I am a cis white queer woman with privilege. You know what I mean? I grew up a little different. I'm from the Bay. I've had to do some things that other people haven't had to do. I work at Condé Nast. I can't identify with everything that you've been through at all. But what I did take away from it was exactly what you just said. When you were looking at me in camera and you're like, bitch, all these men are putting us down to, like, we have to support each other. How many straight white women haven't shaken their ass or done some shit to get to where they need to be? We've all done it. And I didn't take away from it that, like, men are trash, even though cis men who aren't open to to evaluating their privilege have some issues, but I'm not out here being like men are trash, blah, blah, blah. But what I can say is that it really irks me how women really don't always support women regardless of so many reasons. And I loved, like, I laughed during Kokomo City. I cried. I was like, damn, this is at least, though, I felt like, because as a viewer of, you know, seeing trans documentaries, particularly trans women of color, I have felt sometimes when the narrative has been controlled by non-trans women of color, it doesn't feel holistic. And what I loved about Kokomo City, specifically you in it, I was allowed to go into a 360-degree version of somebody's life. You know, you're like, no, this is where I've been. This is where I've gone. You need to listen to me. We need to look outside of our situation. And I felt so like, I felt like it was so raw and so honest. I felt lucky to have seen it. And I was like, yes, you know, it was so unique and so amazing. And yeah, you went in and I appreciated it. And I think you as a director and as a producer now filming that, like you said, you've had all these years, you've had all these different experiences, you've lived a million different lives. But I think you are an intrinsic storyteller, obviously, because I was like, somebody needs to give Daniella a show. I did come out of it like, shit, Oprah, you better be scared living in Montecito. Because nobody can know, like, you know, tell me about what it's like now. You've told your story most recently in Kokomo City. I can't imagine that's the last story of yours that we will hear. And I hope not. But you also are in a position with Daniella's Guestbook to really show other stories and promote other people. When did you start that? And what has been an amazing moment that you've had since starting your platform?
So I think, okay, so I'll go a little bit in reverse. And I think the most amazing moment for me since creating this platform is literally just that. It was having an opportunity to be able to send a message to the creative industry. And what I decided to do was build out a platform that would spotlight other BIPOC artists and help build a network around them that essentially could, in hope, become this equitable pipeline of opportunity through this recognition, visibility, and mentorship that we offer. So yeah, that's the greatest moment. Just being able to even think of something like that and actually execute on it and put it in the world. So Daniella's Guestbook was created during the civil rights uprising during the pandemic, and working at Special Guest and ad agency based down in Brooklyn. They do a number of campaigns for big corporations. And so they were helping with a lot of their brand messaging. And so when the founder, who is also a dear mentor of mine, Aaron Duffy, asked, you know, the team, what can we do? Right. And what should our message be? I said, I think that what we need to look at is addressing the actual issue within this industry. And that is the lack of opportunity and equity for BIPOC artists.
Yeah.
And so I thought about so much of what has contributed to what some people will label as the success of my story. And that was always through simple conversation, right? Like my opportunity for the T word was me literally in a passionate conversation with Laverne Cox at Jane and Mock's book signing. From that conversation, right, just a passionate conversation about what I want to represent, the change I want to make in the world. And through storytelling and telling my story, I understood that power, right? Here it is, just a passionate project turned into an Emmy Award-winning documentary that I'm featured in. And so I said, you know what? Here it is, I'm able to be that person who, for some reason, goes in a room and will call somebody out in a friendly way, right? Sometimes not friendly, because it depended on what day and where I was at and how much I need access to that resource. But I knew that, like, it was conversation. It was being able to connect with people, you know, of power, and needed to do what I did best, which was start a conversation with people, connect people to people that they may have never known about, but see the same value that I see in this artist. And not only just in the project and its marketability aspect, but in the individual. and seeing like with a little bit more resource, with a little bit more support, we can see that this storyteller can help change the ways in which we have conversation about BIPOC people's experiences. And so I just knew that, like, girl, if you got a Rolodex, use it.
Yep.
And with the pandemic, it was like, girl, what are you actually doing at home that you cannot have a conversation with these artists? Like, what are you really doing? I'm sure you painted your nails a few different colors this week. Your dog bowl is full, I'm sure. The cat is taken care of. Like, your sheets are folded and washed. Like, all you have is time to do is have a conversation. And we saw that people were doing that. They were hosting conversation. They were hosting these DJ nights. They were hosting these platforms and creating a space of celebratoriness to keep people sane during the global crisis. And so I wanted to create intentional, equitable conversation. And that's what Daniella Guestbook is a platform that is super intentional, even down to the way that we pair the spotlighted artist with the established industry expert. I always thought, too, it would be cool that if this platform would represent in some ways that commerce in the industry, what would you tell your younger self, right? And so before I go and I identify these artists, I get a list of, industry established people together, and I try to pair the creatives who in some ways have a lot of commonalities of the journey or in their story. And a great example of that would be is that during our first cycle, the New York City Public Advocate joined us for spotlighted artist Brittany Franklin. They both are very public about having a disability. The New York City Public Advocate came from a background of theater and entertainment and then went into politics. Also West Indian. And our spotlighted artist is West Indian, has a background in politics, but went over into film. And so when you think about the conversation and how even if this established industry person is on time, structured schedule, when these artists and that established individual are paired, the conversation is so organic and so relatable. It goes beyond just, that 30-minute time that we allotted, that we built out for the conversation. I mean, conversation was only supposed to be 30 minutes, turned into an hour, and even had to restart the live because they were so into it. And so from those conversations, partnerships were built. Another notable thing that happened was that the director, Lucina Fisher, 15 years in journalism, when she crossed over to filmmaking, it's not necessarily that she would have struggled throughout her whole journey, because she's a very talented individual, but it wasn't so easy getting placement, right, for projects or getting funding. And so we connected her to the CEO over at GLAAD, Sarah Kate Ellis. Not only did Sarah introduce her to the GLAAD network on the live, but then she also made sure to help and assist her secure the remaining funds that she needed to complete for the project, as then would even further to nominate the film for a GLAAD award. And so just even being able to give access, right, to artists that they may not have been given, that they may not have necessarily had before, helps to amplify their work in ways that we know that unfortunately, right, it had to take the person with the access first. But when we remove ourselves as a person in the position of power and privilege or access, and we give the person who deserves that same access, right, that opportunity, they'll begin to be able to flourish because of the resources that the same person who sees value in me will see value in them. We've really just continued to force relationships with established industry leaders, production companies, with top tier festivals, because I'm not in competition with them. I'm just trying to get them to see these artists that maybe they've overlooked and creating a less homogenous community. And, and as we continue to do that, extraordinary things are happening for not only BIPOC artists, but for the ways in which we show up and invite community in. Because this cycle, we focus specifically on trans, and we had an incredible, successful night this past Monday at Noya House in New York City. I was able to put together a panel discussion with Dominique Jackson, Mila Jam, Nyla Moon, Leo. I don't know how to pronounce his name, and Leo, don't kill me if you see this, but he is the lead actor in Mutt that is actually out now. And, I put together a conversation that just talks about the challenges, the progress, and diversity impact, specifically as trans artists. And I never in a million years in starting this platform, but I think that people would fly all the way from New Mexico to attend this event, that people from Toronto would be at this event. And they were. And people flew in and we had a packed house and we had two of our spotlighted artists there. And so I am filled with not only so much excitement about what Daniella Guestbook offer, but I'm filled with excitement and joy. Try to keep it cute because I definitely don't want to cry. Is knowing that I remember what it felt like just wanting to be seen so bad, right? Like so bad. I remember that if it took somebody who I felt is established enough, to see me and to see the value in me, that's all it took. And to think that like in the smallest way, I'll never take credit for somebody's talent or somebody's career, but in the smallest way, if Danielle Guestbook is serving as some type of platform to be an opportunity for BIPOC artists in ways that I didn't have, and me seeing the impact, I've done enough already. If I only got through 2 cycles, I would walk away proud of knowing that I gave people a yes when the industry kept giving them no's.
Ain't that the goddamn truth? I also
I could go up on a tangent, girl.
I love it. I mean, trust me, I watched the movie. I was like, give her the stage, ladies and gents, give her the stage. But it's interesting. I think there's so much power in giving over your power. I don't know if I'm saying this right. I obviously didn't write this down, so just go on this journey with me. But like, being able to provide, as you said, provide a pipeline, connect people. I know that even for my own self, being able to talk to someone who I admire or who I feel like has done the unimaginable, and they give me a little bit of their time, has been so not only rewarding, but it's like really defined a lot of how I reevaluate things and how I move forward as opposed to just feeling stuck. And so for you to create Daniella's Guestbook while you're still obviously working on your own projects, you just did the Self project. I can't imagine all the other things you've got going on. You have an amazing film that you're starring in that everyone is talking about. As I said to you, let me know what you wear to the Oscars because you can be my date, because I went by myself last year and it was amazing, but I was like low key in a corner being like boop, 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 on my phone trying to like talk to somebody. So maybe you and I can be each other's. I mean, I know you got a fine ass husband, but maybe if you don't get whatever, maybe I can tag along.
Girl,
can I tag?
No, I'm like, we could be a throuple for the night.
Trust. Okay, great. I've been in many. It won't be my first. I could lie to you, Danielle, and say you were my first, but that would be a lie, and I'm not a liar. But yes, I would love to be your throuple, part of your throuple at the Oscars. But I think it can be incredibly rewarding to do that, and I think to build a platform like that is no easy feat, and so I think it's incredible what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it. How can people support Daniella's Guestbook? How can they support you? I know you just have the new work you've done with Self. Obviously, there's Kokomo City, but like, what can people do to support you and trans artists as well?
So I think specifically for me, what it would look like that I think it scales in terms of what the partnership or collaborative opportunity would be. So if you want to specifically invest in, me being able to spotlight artists, then we would discuss, a sponsorship package where obviously a lot of that has to do with marketing and would be a more in-depth conversation. So it'd be better for us to connect one-on-one. And then that way, me and my team, we would be able to, have that conversation and then gauge what your support would look like. In terms of, additional support, I think anybody who can offer a space to be able to host these different activations. If you know that you are an established industry leader and can help to amplify the voices of some of these BIPOC artists as a moderator or host, that would be helpful. But obviously, the main one is green, is what keeps us going. And, it's been a very interesting journey with that. But I'm very grateful that, how can I put this? Is that I prioritize not making my activism performative. And what I mean by that is that not just social media facing or just within certain social groups. And so if you're a person that wants to be that in the sense of a real change agent, and not saying that support is not helpful, but I think that we need to move beyond performative activism. And in saying that, it's like, hey, I would love for you, either as a company or as an individual, to brainstorm with me how you can challenge your community to
Right.
support this platform by simply putting together fundraiser nights. And no donation is small, because everything that we get is just only helping us to build out more of a predominantly BIPOC, support team. And it's a lot of different components to this, elements, to this platform, whether it be when we're hosting in-person events, or it's hosting the conversations on our social channels, trying to get project managers. And so most of this has been funded by GLAD and the ad agency, as a strategic partner. And then the other is just me doing the artist hustle and trying to get it out there to people in my network and get those small donations. So everything really does help.
Yeah.
But then there are a number of different projects, because I am a little crazy. But, I have like a TV show idea that I've been working on. Definitely can't get anything away about that. But I will say I'm so excited because a lot of people who are in the industry that I've shown says that they're super excited about this. I've gotten like some really interesting actors and actresses agree to already do it without it being greenlit. So that's super fun. And for that, I'm looking for obviously people who are in, either it's a streaming space or studio spaces. I know right now it's a very awkward time to be saying you need that kind of support with everything with the strikes. But as an independent person, I could see this being an independent project and potentially getting independent independent distributors. So
I also feel like, listen, we are all living in this double strike hell, basically. I mean, my life, it's so funny. Last week I was in Montana, not quite Indiana, but maybe same. I felt a little fish out of water. I was like, ooh, okay, no internet. I was like, all right. And it was interesting. This woman looked at me and she goes, well, you're not acting anymore. And I mean, are you right? Like, how are these strikes affecting you? And I was like, whoa. You have to understand that these strikes affect everybody, especially in California and in New York. But like, I think we also have to move through them. So I love that you're like not pausing on anything, because I think obviously they're hopefully going to come to an end. I always try not to speak in absolutes, because I'm always like, am I fucking myself? Like, is this going to end? Blah. But I think you do have to keep moving through them, and you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to talk to. And somebody listening right now might be like, oh, actually, word. I'm so glad I listened to this, because Daniella has whoop-de-whoop going on, and that's going to work for me, and I think what I kind of want to touch on really quickly is, you mentioned performative activism, which we see so much. We see so much on social media, and we live in this really selfish, kind of self-centered place because the internet and Instagram and TikTok have taken up so much of our lives. And I thought about it, and I was talking about you to my friend Russell before we recorded, because he is a big fan of yours, and I was very excited to do this interview. And what we both took away from watching you on Kokomo City specifically was how much you and what you talked about was so not self-centered and not self-focused. And I think it's so indicative of you creating Daniella's Guestbook. And I really mean this, like, you are able to really look outside of yourself. And was really incredible, because you obviously made me think about so many different things. Just I can only speak about myself, and I know Russell because we spoke about it. But you know, when you talk about how people can help other people, I think really talking about how much performative activism is. I mean, you didn't say this, but I'm going to say this. It's bullshit, you know, and it is so selfish and is so self-centered, and it's fucking ridiculous. And I think that, and I can't stand it, as you can tell. And I think it really is like, you know, supporting people really financially. And I agree with you. Nothing is too small. Like, really, we are in a place right now where we've got to stop being so fucking selfish and so self-motivated. And you can have dreams and you can have goals. And trust me, I also love how you're like, yeah, the fucking dog is fed, the laundry's done. Like, let's go do something else. I'm totally that way. I'm like, da, 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 da. What are like always running around, but you can have dreams and you should fucking have a goddamn you didn't mention talk show or podcast, but Daniella, I hope you have one because you should have one. And those there's a duality in it, right? You can have dreams and you can be your own advocate, and you can keep going, and you can trust me, I'll fucking go to the opening of a goddamn envelope. If someone's like, be on my show, I'm like, okay, like as long as they're not weirdo, like whatever, I'm down. You have to keep promoting. But I think there's also space for us to help each other while helping ourselves. And I really, I'm excited to dive more into Daniella's Guestbook. Obviously, I follow it, and everybody else listening, you should follow it too, as well as Daniella. But I agree, that performative fucking activism is some bullshit,
And you want to know what's been challenging for me too, and the reason why I call it performative activism is because I literally think about like a lot of these people who's showing up in these spaces who are, taking in the Kokomo City narrative. It's a part of an echo chamber, right? A lot of people who are experiencing Kokomo City are like, either it's just cis white folks who are very well progressive, and they're going to be interested in learning about, trans stories. But then specifically the cis hetero white person, right? But I think about how like they don't think to take those stories back into their actual communities.
Yes.
Right? Like they'll leave it with their gay friend. Like they're not gonna go home and tell their husband, like, hey, I saw this really cool trans doc. You should watch it. And if you are that person, you don't have a very small percentage. And so it's like, for me, the performative activism too, it's for the last 3 years, especially during the civil rights uprising, we had these conversations about the importance and the need of equity for the Black community, for Black trans people. But we haven't seen a rise of Black queer people being hired by these corporations.
Correct.
Right? We don't see any representation within the company. And so even though while it can look like opportunity, we have to be mindful that visibility, right, and DE&I is not real change. Like when you're dealing with companies that's only checking off boxes, and is not like actively enforcing certain practices, like making sure that we don't have one Black person in the company, we don't have one Black lesbian in the company, one Black person with a disability, or like one lesbian. Like, we need to stop allowing them to let us just be a checkbox, right? And I feel that as a trans woman of color, because while being on this tour, you can't imagine how many people have said to me, right? Like, you're a great speaker. You're a phenomenal storyteller. You deserve to be out there telling your story. And I'm not going to say everyone I've met, but they would tell me their title. And I know they were in a position where they could have said, hey, I would love to invite you in for our next conference so you can educate. That didn't happen. It was best of luck in your journey. Keep going. Or it's, me meeting in these spaces with agents or managers, and it's, you're incredible, but I won't represent you. Right. And so but I'm very grateful though that I'm built of a different cloth, right? Where like I never cared about the table where I'm invited to. Bitch, I will pull out my little imaginary folding table with my folding chair, and I will build my own table, my own chair. I will invite people who want to be a part of it genuinely to elevate and uplift me, or elevate and uplift any cause or initiative I have going on. And so No, I'm not even concerned about performative activism anymore because unfortunately it's something that's so easy to do because it only lies in the power of a share button on Instagram. So you can make yourself seem like this great ally, this great community leader just by getting following, but don't mean that you actually will show up beyond your following. And so, and that's why I've always known that, right? Like the issue is us not seeing each other in especially those who are still in the margins of society as enough when we just get a little bit of opportunity. Like instead of gatekeeping it, find ways where you don't feel like your position is being threatened, but you can build a network around those artists who need the support to get to where you are in a way that doesn't threaten your position. But so many people are so afraid to do that because it's, oh, somebody might they might be better than me. And if they are, and if they're qualified, allow that person who can lead the movement to where it needs to go. Because exchange of power. If the collective goal will be met.
Ain't that the fucking truth? And listen,
really it right there.
It really, really is. It really is. Okay, I have one last question because I know I've taken up a lot of your time on a Friday. And it's a silly one, but is there any celebrity? And also, I don't know how much you've listened to me or watched me. I always say, don't meet your heroes. Celebrities are monsters. Everybody knows. I think we put them on a pedestal for no reason, but it's always fun. Has there been a fun celebrity that's hit you up that's been like, I love the film, I love you? Or Cyndi Lauper is a real flex. I have to tell you, that's a real New York, flex. But because it's random. I mean, it's amazing, but it's Cyndi Lauper, what a fucking legend. Anybody else that you're like, oh, that's been kind of fun?
Do you not know the backstory? I don't think so. You don't know the backstory of actually me and Cyndi Lauper?
No. You didn't meet her in a bodega, borderline drunk 20 years ago, like me, or what?
No.
You're like, what? I was 8 years old. Get out of here.
Actually, I met her back in 2014. I met her and Nancy Pelosi at her 40 to None summit. And I was one of the guest youth speaker. Then it was so funny how we would just keep running into each other, but I was also affiliated with her organization, True Colors. I think now to rebranded as True Colors United. So I would do a number of different events, right? And I would see her, literally I kept running into her. And I saw her at the Logo Trailblazers Award. And then I saw her because they invited me to speak at her Beacon theater concert with Laverne Cox. When Laverne Cox was hosting, this was all around the T-Word. And I was backstage with all the different performers and everything. And then shortly after that, I ran into her again. Girl, no shade. I really kept running into that lady so much. I was just it got to a point where at first it was hi, Cyndi Lauper. So what's the tea, girl? I'm not even joking. But then it was so funny. And I just said to somebody yesterday, I said, the universe is so funny. And I think about all those little small things that were happening. Not small. I can't believe I just said that about Cyndi Lauper. Don't kill me. But those moments in my life when things are happening, and I didn't really understand at that age why the hell I'm here, in this space. And this is so bad. I had no clue who Cyndi Lauper was in. I knew the song Girls Just Want to Have Fun. But I had
You've lived a lot of lives, Daniella. You lived a lot of lives. However, age-wise, you're a little younger. I am even a little. I'm not actually, Cyndi Lauper was prime my childhood, kind of. But age-wise, on the planet, it kind of makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Give yourself a little grace.
No, of course. And I grew up super religious, so I could tell you any gospel hymn. I can give you a good old gospel hymn, but even when it comes to R&B or pop culture,
were they not letting you listen to Mary
really
Mary
other than Christian music?
Kirk Franklin, Mary Mary.
I did, yeah.
They let you listen to Mary Mary though. Lift shackles off my feet so I can dance. That's a bop.
Yes, we even want to talk about the song yesterday, and Blessed Assurance. See, I could go in on some gospel music, and so. Okay. That in itself, and so it's not like, it's so funny because I was just on my friend. I was like, who would have thought the day I remember standing there in the summit and everybody was going nuts for Cyndi Lauper. And this abandoned, foster care, surviving on the streets as child. It's just like, why are they praising this white woman? What is wrong? And this person like, you don't know who she is? I'm like, no, girl. I'm like, I know this, no shade to her, but I was like, I know this old white lady because I was like, she's always on the news going off about politics, Nancy Pelosi. And so I was like, yeah, I get her, but why is the white lady over there being praised? And then now learning about, I know who she is because I had a lot of shots of whiskey and screaming to the top of my lungs how girls just want to have fun. And, you know, but I was saying to myself, like, who would have thought, right? Like, had I not jumped out that window to liberate myself as a trans person, had I not stayed on that path with, you know, being so committed to tell my story, because I just knew there's no way that I survived all I did and there wasn't something there, to even meet a person who at a time in my life, completely ignorant, right? No clue who she is, no clue to her power. But again, it was me showing up with passion, with purpose, right? That now I can look right 10 years later and say, that's why she's sharing it.
Yep.
You know, it's a great piece, but it was meant to be. That, you know, that moment where like you not knowing was a part of this divine purpose for you to know someday. And I'm just so grateful that, like, you know, today I can say that she knows not only of me, but she's in some ways have been a part of my journey in helping me become. And that is always going to be a pinch me moment for me.
I mean,
I may even do a shot of whiskey tonight in the name of girls just want to have fun. Had one for Sydney.
I love it. Have one for Cyndi. Let me tell you. Wow. I love it. I adore you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And so much love to you. And tell Russell I said, what's good?
I will tell Russell. He'll die. Literally, he was like, will you call me right afterward? Russell is amazing. Russell is an acupuncturist. He is a writer. He is a special person that has been put on this earth to, I don't know. I feel lucky every time I talk to Russell. And Russell, you would love Russell. When you come to LA, when you come visit me, you'll meet Russell.
Much love to you, Russell.
Make sure you follow Daniella's Guestbook. Make sure you follow Daniella. Please go watch Kokomo City. It's streaming now. It's incredible. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Rashida Williams, also known as Coco de Doll, in Kokomo City, was murdered before the film came out in theaters, which is, you know, just incredibly tragic and sad and disheartening. And, you know, I think it's incredible that we celebrate this film to see her and see how beautiful and funny and thoughtful and smart she was. And it's ever more important that all of us, especially women, support all women, inclusive of Black trans women especially. They are being targeted at disproportional rates. And I do believe that it is all of us that has blood on our hands when we don't support the people around us. And so I just wanted to make mention of that. Not to end on a terribly sad note, but I think we do. Hey, if it's uncomfortable, we still have to talk about it, right? But please watch the film. Please support, as Daniella said, your BIPOC creators. It's really, really important that we're just not, you know, sharing things in our stories and liking, but we're actually doing the work. I'm really glad that we talked about that today. And if you've seen the documentary, tell me what you thought, because I loved it.